Hey there 3DMJers, my name is Lawrence and I'm one of the guys over at the Shredded by Science Academy, a year-long course dedicated to making you the best coach possible and improving the standard of knowledge in the fitness industry as a whole. As you may or may not know, we have Eric Helms teaching a 10-week module all about how to effectively coach physique athletes as a part of the academy. And directly after him, we have Dr. Mike Zordos, who I know you've heard of before as a 3DMJ podcast listener. He delivers a 10-week masterclass on all things powerlifting and strength training. We only have 2 enrollments per year, and the next one is coming up very, very shortly on August the 28th. To find out more and to make sure you get some tasty early bird bonuses when you do sign up, head over to shreddedbyscience.com/academy. That's shreddedbyscience.com/academy. Thank you for listening.
Today I'm joined by Brad Loomis and Eric Helms, and we're talking about our experience coaching coaches. A very large amount of our 3DMJ athlete roster is filled with personal trainers, health professionals, and other leaders in the fitness, bodybuilding, and powerlifting industries. We don't take this responsibility lightly and actually find it quite refreshing when someone acknowledges the benefits that can come from hiring a helpful external eye. You'll also hear us talk about how we coach each other, how we deal with problematic attitudes from the coaches we coach, and some ways that you can be a more coachable individual yourself in general for any big goal you would like to attain. As usual, if you have any other feedback or comments on this particular episode, head over to 3dmusclejourney.com and leave it under podcast number 59. Here is Coaching Coaches with Brad Loomis and Eric Helms. Brad, why did you reach out, or obviously you talk to Eric every day, but at what point did you feel like you needed his help in your powerlifting journey, considering that you already coach powerlifters?
Yeah, good question. You know, it wasn't planned. It's kind of by accident. I just kind of found out that, hey, I'm a very coachable athlete. You know, I didn't ever really even think of myself as very coachable.
How did you find that out?
Also a good question. But yeah, I was coached by somebody else who reached out to me and said, you know, I would like to do your programming for you. Would you be interested in doing that? And so I said, yeah, actually, I think I do have a little bit of interest in that. And that was a good relationship that lasted for about a year. And then, you know, circumstances happen and, you know, people grow apart. And so we just kind of distanced ourselves a little bit. And I was like, gosh, you know, I really enjoyed that coaching aspect of it. And I think it was in a meeting that we had where I kind of talked about, you know, looking for coaching and desiring coaching and talking about, going
Did I offer it up?
You did. Remember, it was kind of like,
right,
we talked about that and you're like, well, you know, Brad,
I know a guy. Yeah, that's right. Because you were working with one of our previous athletes who also, on this topic, was a successful coach in his own right, you know, which I think, you know, we'll probably get to the heart of this more, but how coaching is so much about, you know, perspective and, you know, getting around your own blind spots. But yeah, that's right. I remember you'd stopped working with him and then you were looking for someone to step in. And I was like, you know, I'm aware of someone who does powerlifting coaching.
Yeah. And the rest is all history. So
All right. That was 2015, right?
I believe so. Yeah, it was 2015, right. 2016. Yeah. But I think probably a good question is me being a coach and a powerlifting coach, Eric. How am I? Am I a good athlete?
Dude, you're easy. You're super easy. You're one of the lowest maintenance clients I've ever worked with. So I mean,
he wouldn't tell you though if you weren't. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I would.
I'm just kidding.
He's told me that I look ridiculous with my shirt tucked in, so I am sure that he would tell me if I was a bad athlete.
I can be blunt. Yeah. No, Brad. I've worked with some people who are really good coaches, but if you worked with them as an athlete, you would not know that. Like, they obsess over details that don't matter. They apply different rules to themselves than they apply to their athletes. Like, they can sit there and be like, dude, chill out. This doesn't make any sense. And then they'll email you and be like, oh, can I stop doing dynamic warm-ups or am I going to lose all my gains? And you're like, what? that, but I would say Brad is not that way. He seems to apply. He understands principles and theories and can apply them to his own training. So like for example, and we can probably get into more details. Like I can give him priorities on his accessory work and go, right, so I know some weeks you're just freaking busy. You might have to pick up more shifts at the hospital. You might have to take Xander to a bunch of games, or he might have to travel for a game. So like if you don't get the bicep curls and calf raises, don't trip. Like, we have our compounds that are specific to our main movements. We have our compounds that aren't, and then we have our isolation exercises. So we kind of have this priority list that, you get it all done if you can. And that's something I'm comfortable giving to him, while other athletes, for one reason or another, I probably wouldn't do that. Some I would,
Yeah. Which cat am I hearing back there?
That's Bucky.
Uh-huh.
Barb left for the gym, and he's like, she's never coming back. I need to cry. She comes back every time, so be quiet, Bucky.
Just for the listeners, that's who that is. I'm sure we'll get a shot of him at some point before this is over with. His tail.
You look at me now like, what, talking shit.
So, Eric, I have to ask you, what constructive criticism would you have to give to me as your athlete, or what do you think is the challenging, not easy maintenance part of me that's coaching that challenges you?
To be honest, I don't have a ton, or I would have already brought it up to you. But I think because you do well on your own and you make intelligent decisions on your own, and I can write you a block of training, and I hear from you if there's an issue. I probably wish I had a little more information when it did come time to write a new block, because I'm working on a lot less than I normally have. So there's very much a lot of trust, maybe too much, put on you to tell me what. I'm assuming you know what's relevant to me, which you probably do much more than anyone else because you're a coach. But like, for example, if I was to give an 8-week block to someone and then not elicit a bunch of questions from them, they might not know things that matter to me. Like, yeah, I have aches and pains all the time, but it's fine. That kind of thing. Like, oh, that matters, dude, or stuff like that. So like, it's just a question of whether or not you are aware of what variables that matter to me. And I think you are. But like, if I'm not eliciting a bunch of information from you, that means I'm a victim to your blind spots as well. So if I was to say anything, I'd probably say, like, over-report when it comes time for us to write a new block, just in case there's something that I might go, oh, dude, that matters, that you might not think matters. But I can't even give you an example of what that might be. So
but that's different. It's different because you guys work together and talk all the time still. Like, it would be different if Brad wasn't a part of 3DMJ, but just was a powerlifting coach on his own. He would still do weekly check-ins, still make videos, still whatever. But like, he doesn't do that right now because you guys are business
Even if
partners.
he was a Skype client, we would have an hour-long discussion about how to last
every so often.
Went. Yeah, every 8 weeks or and whatnot. Yeah, true.
So y'all are a good example, but like not a good example. As far as like it's a very rare situation that you and your coach, even if you were both coaches, would actually be on the same coaching team. Like, that's not as common.
Unique.
As
I mean, it's I think it's unique, but really, to be honest with you, I think each coach-client relationship where your client is a coach is really somewhat unique. Although
it's becoming more common.
I was going to say, I feel like I'm trying to think now. Almost, I would say more than half the people on my roster are personal trainers, have been personal trainers.
Yeah. And that's not really what I mean. I mean, it's not like it's a rare thing. I mean, it's like each relationship that you have is kind of unique into itself.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And, I think while it is, a lot more common, it's just like you have each one. I mean, I've got a few coaches on my roster too, and no two are alike. You know what I mean? They all have their own nuances.
Yeah. But what I would say is interesting on that same kind of topic of uniqueness is going back to what I was saying, how not all coaches are as self-sufficient or self-reliant as Brad.
Yeah.
Brad's like, I think he's someone who has a lot of trust in me, and because he's seen my work, he knows what I do. But there's a lot of coaches play their cards really close to their chest, and mean, a lot of coaches just don't want another coach because they know best, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which I think is a bit of a kind of a fear or a control thing, because if they really valued their profession and they thought that, coaching was helpful, they would probably be open to having a coach. So it's kind of like this, it's a disconnect in their own mind where they don't get it. It's either that or they are actually a coach who thinks the only value they have is knowledge, which of course, I hope anyone listening to this podcast, like, it's so much not just what you know, it's how you apply it, what decisions you make, how you can relate to someone, how you can communicate it to them, and the ways that you have blind spots with applying your own knowledge to yourself because your own emotional hangups, So if you don't realize that those are valuable things that you do for your clients, or let's just say, honestly, you're not a good coach and all you are is kind of a nutrition and training encyclopedia, and you just give people quote unquote optimal plans and you don't care about how they feel about it or how it fits in their lives, then yeah, maybe you wouldn't see the value because what's quote unquote optimal. But yeah, that's, in my opinion, a minority of the value of coaching.
Yeah.
So
I think that I'd be interested to hear with y'all too. Like I said, with a lot of when we say coaches on my roster, actually none of them are contest prep coaches. They have a lot of personal trainers, like a lot of Gen Pop weight loss coaches or in person. Same with y'all, or do y'all actually have
a mix of both?
A mix of both.
Yeah, a mix of both for sure. And some people don't even really. I think it's very rare that this happens, but I mean, some coaches really don't even utilize this as much as coaches as other folks would. Some folks kind of use this as more like consultants. And, I think as long as the objective is met, there's really, nothing wrong with that. And so what I mean by that is, I've had rare individuals in the past that would be like, okay, here's how I'm looking, here's what's going on, here's my spreadsheet. And then I'll say, okay, well, you know what, I think at this point we need to do X, Y, and Z. And, they'll be like, okay, yeah, that sounds good. But, at the same time, I think what would be best for me and for applying it in my life that I do this, but your information is appreciated, duly noted, and, thanks. And then we go about our business. And I've had a couple, very good relationships that had good outcomes, where they did kind of utilize my services more as consultant, than coach.
Like y'all work together.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, you have to have in that aspect. And I've made this mistake before, of where the outcome was not good, and I think at some point, and it was basically because we didn't have good open communication, and so at some point, I mean, first of all, you have to have good open communication, and you have to have the trust to know, okay, well, you know what, at this point, what I say goes, because where we're going here. If I have my little crystal ball, it's not working. You're not going to be happy with the outcome, and you have to grab them by the face mask, and just say, look, you need to do this, and that's why, we've talked so many times that you need to have that good rapport, that good coach-client relationship right off the bat so that you can step in, take the reins and say, you're getting in your own way.
Yeah. I've never had someone who is, like that, but I have had a common thing with me is if they are already coach or already professionals in the field, they'll come at me with their situation, and here's what I'm suggesting. Is that okay with you? Which that pattern I actually really like, because if it's half the time if they are experienced enough and they know themselves, whatever, half the time I'm like, that sounds great, let's do that. But sometimes I'll have to just offer an alternative and leave it up to them. But usually if I do a good enough job offering that alternative and saying, and this is why I think it's better for us here, although I do see your point, we can either meet in the middle or they'll just come my way. But
I think there's a lot of personality involved in that. Like, for example, Bryce has been a coach for a while now, and as he became a more and more advanced athlete and became a coach and was seeking me out as a mentor, and like we actually had him as like an official 3DMJ
intern?
Like coach intern under me, same time as Mike Shade, and we co-coached some people. So I was basically changing our roles and more intentionally, and there was a point where I'd go, Bryce, you kind of give me the structure of the program you want to write. We'll talk about it. I'll give my feedback. It was very much kind of that consultant relationship where he'd come to me and I'd say, here's how we should modify that, or here's why I do agree with this, don't agree with that, or tell me more about this, or why do you want to do that, and challenge him where appropriate and stuff like that. Funny thing is though that we went through that period. I think it was useful for both of us, and then we got to a certain point where he was like, Eric, to be honest, I just like to be told what to do to some degree, and I second guess myself too much. I can do it, but it's a lot of emotional work for me to get around all my hangups and second guessing. So can I be a little more like an athlete, Yeah. So I think the personality aspect there, even though I think there's a few things that go into play. One is just the experience level of the athlete. An athlete who knows himself very well is one thing. That is part of the prerequisite for whether you have a more consultant relationship, but it's also personality. I think if the person wants to remain in control and is then also good at remaining objective at certain time points, if all three of those things occur, experience, objectivity, and likes to be in control, then that's the perfect person to be a consultant with. But if any one of those is a problem, then they might want that, but it might not be the best for them. And you need to know when to step in and say, I know you think this is what's best, but let me remind you why you hired me. Either you've lost your objectivity or you don't have enough experience with your body to really have the same eye ideal. I actually can see something that you're not seeing.
Yeah.
Or you want to be in control, but you're absolutely losing your shit and you're just you're afraid of letting someone else take the reins, and I need a little more trust. So depending on which factor is harming that consultant style coaching relationship, there's different decisions to make. Or maybe you look up and go, shit, I shouldn't have been in this position with him in the first place, and I should have been a little firmer up front, 6 months ago, and said, no, like I get it, and certainly I want your feedback, but of course I'm not an authoritarian coach, but there are times I'm like, well, I'm going to write your program and give me feedback every time. We can modify it and asking all the questions you want, but you didn't hire me to write your own program, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've been in situations like that where it's bitten me in the ass 6 months later, where they've really lost their shit, and I'm like, I'm letting them drive this bus off a cliff, and it's my own damn fault, Or I've had clients who just won't, they won't even start with me because I don't give them enough control, and I go, I dodged the bullet there,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I can appreciate that Bryce did that. I'm the same way. I'm just like, just tell me what to do. I don't. I have.
I'm the same, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, because I wouldn't have hired. Because I've only had two coaches as far as as an adult, right? I mean, besides cheer and gymnastics or whatever, it was Berto and my current coach, David, and I wouldn't even contact them if I didn't have 100% trust in their abilities and their track record and the things that they've done and the athletes they've produced. And so at that point, it's not like I trust every coach the way I trust these two. It's just that I feel like it's part of your job. If you are a good coach too, you should know this, that your athlete has done so much research so that by the time they come to you, they're ready to hand it to you.
There's this personality aspect there too. Yeah. I'm the same way. I like to be told what to do. I can be a good soldier, but it has to make sense to me.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have hired your coach if you didn't know that they did things that make sense to you, right?
Right, but then you can get something that comes down the pipe. And so I also ask questions, though. So for example, Adam Story was doing my Olympic weightlifting coaching for a while. And until he basically moved on to now he's a rugby coach. But I still ask questions. I would have as much faith as I have in anybody,
right.
Because I'm just not really a faith guy. I like to understand things. So he, of course, I respect him. His theory is we talk and makes sense. Everything he does. You write me a program and something on the program doesn't make sense. But hey, what's your thought process here? And he, of course, he would just explain it to me, and I go, okay, cool. But if I had a coach who would be like, don't worry about it, or I'm just trying something out, or they couldn't give me a good explanation, that would create a problem for me. But I think some people wouldn't even ask the question. They'd be like, nope, I know he knows what he's doing. And I think that's a difference in personality.
But what would possibly come up that you would be like, this doesn't make sense? Is it an inquisitive, I'd like to know why you're doing this, or What is that like?
Oh no, not necessarily with a negative. I'm open to the idea that either like the possible one. There's one, like for example, he gave me isometrics on bench press. I don't know enough about isometrics, so I asked him, hey, so where do you determine where you set the rack to prevent the bar from moving forward or to stop the motion, and then how much transfer do you think this is going to have? How does this combine into our overall plan? I just didn't understand all that because I'd never done it before. And he was like, well, I want to try going through phases of isometric, eccentric dominant, and then also even some higher velocity concentric stuff and see if we can train those different aspects and get you a better bench. And we tried that, and then we abandoned it later, which I'm totally fine with, but I just needed to hear the rationale. But I think some personality types would have been like, nope, it's all good. I'll do whatever you say because I'm athlete, you're coach. And that's just not me. I don't come into it as a skeptic like, oh, this is bullshit. I just come into it like, here's something I don't understand. I'm going to ask them so I can understand. But I won't be able to do it with confidence unless I understand why we're doing it. So.
Okay.
Interesting. How about just a quick question for Eric? What if, because I've pulled this before, and not that it's a strategy or it's like I don't know what I'm doing, but what if, your coach come back and said, you know what, it's just, I'm just making a gut call here. I think it'll work. And obviously in that sport, it's a little bit less, I guess, it's more of an actual tangible thing than an art form like physique coaching. But I just want to keep your thoughts on that, kind of in both perspectives.
I think I'd need to know what's that gut feeling based on. I think it's a tough example for like exercise selection. But Correct. If you were to say like maybe something a little more art formy, like if he was like, you know what, Eric, I want to push your intensity a little longer before we start the taper. And I'd be like, well, what's your thought process there? And he goes, I don't know. I just have a feeling based on what I see in your training that if we keep the volume in longer and then drop it out, that you'll get a better peak. And I'd be like, okay, fair enough. We can try that. If I don't perform well, then we'll know for our next comp, Mm-hmm. So something where you can't quite nail it down because we don't or can't have science on it, I'd be okay with that. But for day-to-day calls, like, if I don't understand the rationale, I'm going to ask for the rationale, and if they can't give it to me, then I'm not going to do
Interesting. Yeah, I think I have both, right? Like when I'm thinking about the way that I am with my current coach, I have to blindly because I know nothing about it. Because I'm not a coach in CrossFit or Olympic lifting or grit or whatever. So I'm like, why don't I have a question? I'm like, because I have no fucking idea. Well, like literally my first week where he was like, you have some testers. I go to the CrossFit gym and I'm like going to the coaches there and I'm like, what does this even say? Like I didn't even know what it was. You know what I mean? But like working with Bert, I think I'd watched so many, probably every single 3DMJ piece of content and read everything I'd ever done. So like anything that he would ever request to me, I'd be like, makes sense. Like it fell right in line with the usual. So I never felt that way. But yeah, now I'm just so, even if it's been a year and a half now and I'm still like, I don't feel like I'm in a position to question a damn thing because it's just so new.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me. I don't question it in a confrontational manner. I question out of a genuine curiosity to understand why. Because like you, I wouldn't hire someone unless I respected them. So if they do something I don't know, my first thought isn't they're an idiot. My first thought is, oh, am I missing something? Yeah,
I think it's cool. Like if I even started, I'm just so. I mean, I see patterns now, right, because of my previous coaching experience in a bunch of sports. Now, a year and a half in, I see the patterns. But if I would have, like, week 1 or 2 been like, can you explain that? He would have been like, so here's the sport, right? And here's, like, it would have been like, I would have to sit there and, like, probably spend a week with him, like, in a course teaching me about all this stuff. Because even though I had master's in X-Phys, like, there's too many domains to even.
It's unique.
Yeah, to even think about. Which actually makes me respect all of our athletes who have never competed or coached before coming to us even more. That's got to be terrifying now to think about it.
Yeah, and I think that personality also comes out in the way I coach. So like, I always tell someone why I'm doing something.
Mm-hmm. Same. Yeah.
Yeah, and I probably for some clients I know I over-explain why I'm doing it.
Yeah. I know.
I saw this. I'm thinking this. Here are the couple options. Next week, if we don't lose, and then we'll take a diet break. After that, we're probably going to go to these macros for this reason. We'll change your refeed schedule. And they're just like, okay, so this week no changes. Next week diet break, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. You know,
as y'all can tell, I do that to us in our base camp all the time. Like in our team management software, everyone's like, "Could you please not write a novel?" Thanks. Like every little question, I have to like overly explain. It's how I come to my. I honestly though too, and I bet you're the same way too, Eric. Is that you're not just doing that for them, you're also doing it for yourself, because that's how I arrive at things. Is either just keep typing till I find like the last sentence. I'm like, oh, that was what I was looking for the whole time. Or I'll just keep talking until it all makes sense to me. It's funny.
Yeah, I think if anyone understands that, it's the people on this podcast right now, the external processors.
Yeah.
For sure.
Have y'all been coached just by each other, right? Like as adults, like not since you were a kid in team sports or youth sports, but you had Adam for your Olympic lifting, right, Eric? And then just the other guys, and then Brad.
Yeah, so I had.
Oh, go ahead. We'll start with you.
Yeah, so I had 2000. I mean, I got feedback from everybody in 2009 to some degree. It probably wasn't as formal with Brad because I'd only met him in like February of 2009.
Right.
And we hadn't really formed 3DMJ yet. But Berto was basically coaching me for all of 2009. Lane was doing my nutrition. But, you know, Berto was like the person I would talk to. And then Berto handled me for the last couple months. So I'd hired Lane for like the first 6, I think. I can't remember exactly. And then, yeah, in 2011, I think I basically consulted with the whole team at different times. I got a lot of posing coaching from Jeff. Jeff was like my posing coach from 2009 to ever. I spent some time training kind of with Jeff's style in 2010. Like this, I would go to train with him like 3 or 4 times a week. And that's when I found out I'm not Jeff. my lower body was progressing and kept doing its thing. My upper body started shrinking. I was getting weaker, doing the same. So we were going opposite directions with the same training. Jeff was getting stronger on pressing, and I was getting weaker. I was like, okay. So, but my RDL got really strong. It was funny. I think I was doing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah. So yeah, I purposely spent some time to learn from Jeff and see how he does things. And I feel like 2011, I probably leaned on everybody a little bit. Probably Berto the most, just because I had the most history with Berto. And, you know, he'd been there for a lot of like emotionally stressful times in my life. But I think I pretty much got everyone's opinion kind of round robin style in 2011, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, and when you won your pro card over here in Reno, remember Jeff did your whole peak, whereas Bert did your previous 2. Yeah, that's right. And then you guys helped me clean up, so I actually came back in finals and won. So which was an interesting experience all in itself. It was like platform coaching and bodybuilding.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
What about you, Brad? I know you did you followed.
Skip the core.
Yeah, Skip's weekly things for your first prepper too.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Skip was really kind of like my first coach as an adult. Even though it was a very, compared to especially to what we do, it was a very loose, coaching relationship. And I just pretty much just followed kind of what he did. We only talked a couple of times, really. And that was kind of my first experience with a coach as an adult. And really, I mean, for the most part, a coach, period. Outside of academics, I guess you might say. Okay. So, but yeah, that's one of the reasons why I found out pretty late, in my athletic career that I am a very coachable person, because I really didn't have that kind of a relationship, leading up to that, all the sports that I had competed in, it was just kind of one of my strengths. It was a natural thing that I could, wrestle and that I could play racquetball and bowl and, do things like that. So it wasn't until I needed coaching to improve, my skills that I, really kind of found out that I was a coachable person.
If you compete in bodybuilding again, how are you going to do it, Brad?
Yeah, much different. That's for sure. I think that the smart thing for me to do, especially knowing what I know now, would just be kind of, like what I'm doing now. Just kind of say, look, I need a program. I need bodybuilding training program. Especially because I've done powerlifting now for what, 2.5, 3 years.
Although if someone was to look at your sheet, they'd be like, "Oh, there's a fuck ton of bodybuilding accessory work in here."
Oh yeah, for sure.
But like,
But
would you have Eric program it, or would you just do your own?
I would definitely have Eric program it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I would definitely have Eric program it because I think Eric even probably knows more that line between powerlifting and bodybuilding than I do. You know what I mean? Nutrition, I feel pretty comfortable that I could do that, but I would still love to have somebody just look over the numbers, even if it was just once a month, because I feel pretty comfortable at least, following the numbers, so to speak, doing my programming nutrition wise and then following the numbers. And then when it does time to make a gut call, look at the numbers, look at the physique, that's when I would definitely want somebody over my shoulder.
What about you, Eric?
I would probably set up my own program, have regular like check-ins with the guys and you, like say every couple months, and then sometime around where I know I typically get crazy, I would be like, all right, let's make those check-ins more regular. And I would probably write out a plan beforehand. Like if I'm 8 months out, I'd be like, we probably want to drop our volume in the last 2 months and, make sure we're not losing weight too fast. Just so like, if I looked up, I can always reference back to that and be like, I'm really going the exact opposite direction of this. Like, I don't think I'm in danger of doing that like I used to, but I can still find old forum posts of like 2009 where I'm justifying increasing my volume in like August and my season ended in September, And I was like, well, I had better work capacity because I'm in such good shape from all the cardio, so I should be able to do more volume, and that's a good thing. And people are like, you're complaining that you're wrecked all the time and you're increasing your training volume. That doesn't make any sense, But yeah, I can find a way to justify doing dumb shit. But I like 2011, I think I did a pretty good job. And if anything, I was too conservative. Like, I don't think I actually did enough volume for my upper body. I was like really backed off. And I wasn't quite as big from the waist up. Like, so I think I know where that line is of what's an appropriate amount of work for me to do. And 2011 was the first time I consistently lost weight the whole time through. I had a twice per week refeed schedule or 3 times per week throughout. And like my carbs never got below 100 on low days. And my fat, I think, stayed at 40 to 50, which is really low, but that's,
I was going to say, damn.
That's somewhere that I plateaued for.
Yeah.
But I also had, remember, 2 to 3 refeeds that like one still at 400, even deep into prep,
Yeah.
So like, and so, yeah, I think I would do a really good job prepping myself this time, but I would need kind of like, insurance basically.
I would want to pretty much be on Bert's roster exactly like anyone else.
Yeah.
Like I would want to do weekly videos, talking just to him, give him the reins. It's funny.
That's what I wanted in 09. Basically, I was just like, handle me kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like when Lane finished my nutrition, I was like, all right, I'm just going to report on the same day I reported to Lane to you now.
Yeah.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
Yeah. Would y'all ever get coached by, this is totally not even on topic, I don't know. Would you ever get coached by someone other than one of us?
Yeah.
Well, I have before.
That's right, you did, Brad. I know you did for Olympic lifting because, like, we can't do that for you, Eric, but...
Yeah, I think I would be... I don't know that I actually would, but I'd be interested if there was someone out there who had a very, very different approach that still made sense but was successful. Yeah. I would be interested in just trying it, more from a learning perspective,
I feel like the cost is so high, though.
The cost being...
Like, if Like, because contest prep is so many months, and it's a step backwards in your overall career process every time you do it, right? Because you're not getting any bigger. And it only comes every few years. Like, that's me as an athlete, that forever fight of, like, you always try to convince your athletes, like, this isn't a big deal. This is a part of your career. It's going to be cool. It's, you're making this into a stressful thing. Like enjoy it. Yeah. But then at the same time, when I think of, like, this person does things real different than we do, let's go ahead and try that. I'm like, whoa. Like,
yeah.
Well, I don't think I would do it with anyone where I actually felt it was a gamble. Like, I can't really think of, like, I know I just said a second ago they would need to be doing it differently from me, but it still makes sense, so it'd be a learning experience. But I don't know if that's realistic. Like, how different can it really get based on the principles that we know? Like, I don't use a calorie deficit. Like, okay, I'm not going to work with you.
I actually gain weight into it, yeah.
I only use cardio. Like, what do you, okay, no thanks. So, like, I can't think of, like, I can sort of think, like, oh, like, Cliff's method of peaking someone, a extreme backload would be interesting, and they deplete some first, but that's not like that different. It's just like changing the order of where the front load is and then putting it all on the end and then depleting a little bit. Like, I've done similar things to that, especially since I've seen Cliff be successful, but that's not a whole prep either. I don't think there'd be huge differences between the way we or Cliff Wilson would prep someone. For the most part, the backload is going to look different than our
because
backload.
Science is science, and, like, there's some global truths, and
you're going to lift weights, and you're going to be in a calorie deficit, and you're probably going to be on at least a moderately high protein diet, and then so I guess realistically probably not. But I'm not opposed to the idea philosophically.
Yeah, I get so attached that I couldn't imagine it. Like, obviously I trust everybody, all 1, 2, 3, 4 of y'all, but I would just, I know, I was like, oh my God, there's 5. Okay, I was almost going to say all 5 of y'all. I would trust all 4 of you guys, but I would want Bert to coach because he's done it with me before. That's it. And, like, not that I'm even, again, the grid league or whatever, the current goal, I'm still at least a year away from even trying out, right? But I have these weird thoughts. I'm like, because my coach is one of the grid team coaches, and there's 8 teams. Like, what if another team picks me up? I'm like, would I even want to do it? And it's like, that's stupid. Like, of course you would, But I'm like, but he knows everything so far.
Yeah.
So I get real. I don't know where that came from, but I've always been like that.
You get biased with who you get attached to, and it's comfortable, it's familiar, and there's safety in something that you already know, and it is working. So it's scary to try outside of it. I think that's normal.
Yeah. And I also grew up living with, like, my coaches were my half parents. So, like, 4 hours a day, same coach year after year after year. So that probably comes from that too. Like, and they were obviously right there. So, like, that's probably why in 2013 when Berto was like, I'll coach you, I was like, I'm going to move there. And he was probably like, actually, this is a good opportunity. Would he think I was batshit crazy when I said I was moving there? Do y'all remember this?
He was probably ready for you to be batshit crazy.
Probably
but then you probably proved him wrong,
Oh, he didn't talk about it with y'all? See, there I am thinking I'm this special snowflake. He's probably like, so there's this athlete, whatever.
I mean, honestly, I don't remember him saying, like, oh my God, this really needy athlete is moving out to California.
I wasn't needy.
There you go.
He's told me that too. I thought I was needy, but
I think in typical Berto style, I probably saw a Q&A get uploaded somewhere with him in it. I was like, oh, who's that? What's going on? And he's like, oh, that's Andrea. I've been coaching her for a while. And I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah.
Okay. But and I thought at the time, like, I never wanted to bother him. I'm still like that with my coach now. Like, I'm like, unless something's really wrong, like, I'm just doing my check-in on the same day. I don't mess.
My arm fell off.
Yeah.
I figured I should email you.
Yeah, I try not to bother him real hard, like, and I didn't know it until I became a coach, or, like, maybe a couple years after our prep together, like, he told me, he was like, no, you were like super easy. And now as a coach, I'm like, oh shit, I was pretty easy. Because some people really need a lot more than, because it was with me in my brain, I'm like, it's physique. Like, what could happen in a week? What could possibly happen in a week? I lost
Mike
0.5 instead of
funny.
0.8 and it like pounds. I was like, what's gonna, I just do my sheet. Like what? But,
Mike T said something funny to me. I don't remember the conversation, but he was like, as with most coaches, you probably find that your really low maintenance clients subsidize your high maintenance clients, which I thought was funny. Like you've got some people who are really, really good decision makers and resourceful on their own, and even not that the people who contact you a lot aren't. It's just that sometimes they second guess themselves, or they're nervous, or they're anxious, even though they know the answer. They need reassurance.
yeah.
So people who don't need reassurance, like take up so little time when you're coaching them. I'll get a 3-email or like a 3-line email or a 1-minute video, and then I send them a 5-minute video, and it stays like that. It's like a 5-to-1 ratio, but with other clients, it's like a 5-to-1 ratio the other way, So, yeah.
Like, I remember trying so hard not to bother him, trying. And then the couple days before my first show with him, he was teaching at Lane's Camp. And I couldn't get a hold of him because he was busy, and I, like, lost my shit. I, like, called Melissa.
That's hilarious.
Because we thought I could handle a carb load, and I just, like, spilled over like crazy, and I was like, what do I do? I'm giant. What do I do? What do I do? And then, like, he didn't answer, and so I texted Melissa. She's like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know. And I was, like, so upset. And poor Bert, like, made me this big old video apologizing, and I was like, it's okay. I was being crazy. But that's funny. I have a bad habit of that, too. I'll let shit go. Like, remember with my shoulder last year?
None of my clients have Barb's number.
I know. Well, it's because we all lived in the same city. We trained together all the time. Yeah, so I knew Melissa really well. I mean, who does that, right? I'm going to call my coach's girlfriend. Get out of here. Anyways.
I know. I wish I'd have known that. You should have got a hold of us. I'm like, God damn it. I wish I would have been there.
It was Johnny's show. It was the NGA Folsom. I think I was just being crazy, though. I'm sure half of that was the stress blow.
At least 5 times.
At least 5 times. Okay, so back to coaching coaches, though. What are we? We just like started talking about our own shit.
However, all of us have been our coaches and have been coached, so I think it's still relevant.
Yeah.
Count it. Yeah.
Well, why do coaches hire coaches? In my opinion, I think that's probably the most important question to ask somebody. Why does a coach hire a coach? And you guys can chime in after I'm done, but in my opinion, anybody that hires a coach wants to be better. And that's kind of the bottom line. You look at a football player, a football player has, a running back has a running back coach because they want to be better. They want to be, have their skills better. They have strength coaches that, make them be faster and be able to cut quicker. And I think that's really the bottom line. If you want to be better, you're going to strongly consider having a coach in almost whatever you do. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah.
I would.
I think for me,
or at least learning. I think some people do it I think a lot of coaches do it in our community because they want to be better coaches sometimes.
Right. Mm-hmm. With me, and what I just talked about, I guess, too, would allude to me. As a physique athlete, I think it's 100% for objectivity's sake. Like I said, I watched every one of Berta's videos. I knew every call he made, the reasons why he was making any call he made, but I wouldn't make them for myself because I'm inside of me. I know what I'm feeling. I overthink. Same with Bryce, right? Like I know enough to make myself crazy. So I need to have someone outside of me tell me what to do. And more than anything, and Bert always says, in my specific case, it's to calm me down, to be like, Bert, chill out. It's not a big deal. Chill out.
Yeah, I think some of it's, just even if you could make the right decision, it's to reduce the emotional and time cost of it.
Right.
Like, I think it's like, just like Bryce could easily write himself a good program. Well, no, he could. It wouldn't be easy for him because at certain times he would be too emotionally attached for it. He would second guessing.
Right.
Same reason he doesn't really like RPE based training, which we tried for a while. It's like,
That's funny. 'Cause I'm the
like
same way.
you can tell me do this load and then it should be between a 6 to 8 RPE, but when I have to drop the load and I know we're in an intensity phase, I start losing my shit because I think the load should be that high, and then I go over the RPE, and then the next session shit too, and then like the wheels slowly fall off, you know.
Yeah.
So that like that's kind of a I think it's a personality thing. So I think all of those factors can come into play: objectivity, just simply wanting to be better, or even it being, I could do this on my own, but it's easier when I have someone who doesn't have all the hangups that I do because I'm me, you know, when I'm coaching myself.
And by easy, we don't mean lazy. We mean, like you said,
less of an emotional and time
That's
cost.
an investment. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Because I know for me, I mean, I rely heavily on, you know, some of the folks at the gym just for technique coaching. You know, I want to be like I talked about with just in the effort and the desire to be better. You know, I rely heavily on somebody kind of giving me technique coaching on my squat. You know, now obviously, like you, Eric, I'm going to kind of take everything with a grain of salt and kind of make sure that it all makes sense. But those that I truly trust, you know, I think that's another aspect of coaching that is, you know, kind of somewhat unique and is kind of something I miss out on. I wish I had more involvement with, you know, a lot of my my clients is having that skills type of a scope of a coach, you know, and I think that's another, you know, aspect of coaching that, you know, I think people need to pay attention to.
Yeah, that's actually something we were talking about at our North Sport Olympic Weightlifting Committee meeting. So it's the same place that the club I've been part of since I moved to New Zealand, or shortly afterwards, where I got coached by Adam. It's a actual club, like it's a registered club with Auckland. So it has a committee that makes administrative decisions. So it's kind of like a nonprofit organization-ish. Anyway, I serve as the president currently, and it's just something you volunteer for, and you know, if you get voted in, you do it. But anyway, we're talking about the process of onboarding new lifters, and we were like, well, so does everyone who joins North Sport have to get coaching and programming? We're like, what if there's a really successful high-level lifter who self-programs who comes and wants to train at North Sport? And I was like, well, I mean, coaching looks different at different levels. Like, it may just be that they do their own programming, they bounce that program off one of the coaches, and the coach, you know, gives them technique feedback. You know, so like it can look a lot different at all levels, and like it can be more like a consultant relationship, et cetera. And I think so long as a coach understands that their biggest asset and their biggest resource and the most useful tool and place that they get information from is the athlete themselves, they will be very good for most people. I think the coaches who get into trouble are the ones who don't have any flexibility in their approach.
Yeah.
When they coach other coaches. Because then they miss things that they can't get from that athlete if they only have one way, you know?
I think that's the same reason it's so hard for me to be coached too, is that, I mean, I'll say everybody knows this, but I recognize, and I know you guys too, that there are a lot of people, a lot of great athletes in any sport that have gotten there in a number of ways, right? And so that's why it's so hard for me coaching myself. It's like, I can think of 10 bodybuilders that do things 10 different ways. Mm-hmm. Which way should I do it? Because I've seen success this way, I've seen success this way, and knowing me, of these 10, 3 or 4 have been pretty good so far, and which of those 3 or 4 should I do? And it's like, you know what, just take it. Just get it out of there. You know, It's because you know that there's a lot of different approaches that can be effective. And because of that, the decision making wears me out in a big kind of way.
I think you see that in a lot of industries, whether it's people who follow successful business people, or there's people who follow successful athletes, or whether it's people who follow successful quote unquote thought leaders. If you follow success and you just take it on, not faith necessarily, but you make the conclusion that successful people are doing everything right, you're going to be basically like following fashion trends. You know, You have to have some kind of underlying critical thinking skill, knowledge of the basic foundations of what makes sense, and then some kind of priority understanding of okay, this guy really, really harps on that, but realistically, that probably isn't going to make a big difference for most people, or maybe it made a big difference for him or her because of their specific personality or situation, you know? Like, I'll give an example that's totally outside of bodybuilding, like Gary Vee. Like, he has an entire platform based on playing to his strengths and hustling, you know? For some other people, though, if the barrier to their success was one of their weaknesses, correcting a weakness would have been the strategy for them, which is counter opposite to what Gary Vee is, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and same thing, like some of the things we see bodybuilders do, it's like, oh, they do this, this, and this, and this, and this. It's like, yeah, but they still create a calorie deficit. They still use progressive overload, and they still eat a moderately high protein diet at least.
Yeah.
Like, so don't get too hung up on whether or not they have, carb cycling or refeeds or straight days. Like that's not going to be the it factor,
Yeah.
The fact that they have the big rocks in place, have good genetics, and work hard is probably the reason why you're watching them on YouTube, not because they have their refeed on Saturday and Sunday, So
Yeah.
And I think the less you know about something, whether that's business or a sport or an area, like you have less ability to identify what would be the key factors. So I always have to tell people, like, it's good to follow champs, but you have to counterbalance that with other information. Champs in whatever field, whether that's science, life, business, whatever.
Yeah, I think people too don't in muscle and strength, right? In physique athletes, and not so much powerlifting, but with physique athletes, you can be a really great coach and have a very good understanding and not look the part yet. And I think that confuses people sometimes because you have no control. I mean, you have some control, right? If you do have those big building blocks and maybe you just need the years under your belt, but you've been studying your ass off and working with people and and that fallacy, I think, it's weird for me, right? Because like I have 2 girls on my roster right now that are figure athletes that look way better than I ever did on stage, and our shit works great, we work well together.
I don't know why.
But,
I don't know why physique culture developed that so obviously and like so just explicitly. Like I remember looking at old videos of me with Matt, and there's always the comment, Matt's bigger than his coach, and I don't even get it because like Usain Bolt's faster than his track coach,
right?
Idiot. What are you talking about,
Yeah, but it's the opposite way, right? Like people, like I said, before hiring 3D, I watched everything you did. I obsessed over the whole website. I knew all y'all's backstories. Like I watched you guys on other people's YouTube channel. Yeah, it was a shit website. So that was the first thing I changed. No, I'm just kidding. Y'all are resourceful. That's all I can say. But it's like, and then when you have physique, it's like, but if they look good for Instagram, they're qualified. And I'm just like, no.
Yeah.
So I think
it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in other sports. It's like Eric just said. Jason Garrett is the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. He was a 3rd-string quarterback.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's like
nobody questions him.
With every sport, the bad decisions actually are everywhere, right? Like if I see a good Olympic weightlifter, I assume they could be a great coach. Like that's a disaster, and that's often too because the most talented people, not that they didn't have to work as hard, but of course they had to work hard. But sometimes, like I went far in gymnastics, but I wasn't like the champion, like state, national, whatever, right? But of the like all the girls on my team, I was one of the 2 or 3 that was a coach the longest afterwards and had the most success as a coach. And a lot of the girls that were like maybe better than me, when I would see them coach classes, I'm like, oh God, like stop, like no, And so I think the detachment of athletic success versus like how well they know their pedagogy, like how there's just a really big disconnect.
Yeah, there's a couple nuances here. Like one is you're 100% correct. The skills it takes to be a good athlete and the skills it takes to be a good coach have a lot less overlap than most people think.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
You know, like I always make jokes about how, you know, like, so Jordan was a fantastic basketball player, and then he was involved with the Wizards. And I always used to make the joke of like, all right, can you imagine Jordan getting the team huddling together and go like, all right, Tom, play better defense. Jim, dunk from baseline. All right, when you make those 3-pointers, just jump a little higher and then don't miss. Okay, break. You know, like, okay.
And that's probably exactly what it would have been like too.
Thanks, MJ. You know, like the perspective he would have on what it's like to be even a good player in the NBA is versus the one that arguably the greatest of all time is not the same. So that's one.
Yeah.
The other thing is I think some people will then, like when they go, oh, okay, so being a good athlete isn't the same as I should do exactly what you do. They take it too far the other way. And they go, the only thing I care about is, you know, either science or like, you know, stuff like that. And they disregard people who are successful. Like there's nothing to be learned from watching pro bodybuilders, or there's nothing to be learned from listening to what, you know, really high level, but not necessarily really intellectually savvy powerlifters have to say. And it's like, well, just because not everything they're doing is right and the reason they're succeeding doesn't mean that everything they're doing is wrong either. In fact, the one thing we can know about someone who's successful is that they're doing enough right to be successful.
Right.
They probably have all their big rocks in place at least, you know?
Yeah.
They may have a lot of dumbass small rocks, and they may have, if they have fantastic genetics, then maybe they're missing one big rock or something like that. But for the most part, especially in if you're looking at the cream of the crop, you know they're at least not doing it wrong.
Right.
You know?
And then there's something to be said for people thinking that physique or like bodybuilding coaching or whatever is nothing but decision making, which it is more about that. I mean, every sport there's decisions to be made, yeah, but a lot of skill-based sports, people I think appreciate the work that the athlete puts in more than they do in this sport, because like everybody eats, but you know what I mean? Like there's sometimes what the athlete does, I don't want to say sometimes, it matters just as much as the coaching. And I think people like to overly give credit to the coaching and like underselling their performance in the gym or in the kitchen, as weird as that sounds.
Mm-hmm. The work that's being done, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I think that people who kind of have this false belief that everything a coach says gets done exactly what it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
And that a coach is aware of everything that an athlete's doing.
Yeah.
And that the athlete perfectly understands everything the coach says. Like, those are all false assumptions. You know?
Yeah.
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 I find too the personal trainer to physique coach is very different. Like, I think people miss that. Like, they are a good personal trainer. They look great, and they come for their first season of bodybuilding, and it's just a different animal.
Yeah. I mean, I'd been a personal trainer for 5 years before I started taking on athletes at 3D Muscle Journey, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, Berto, you got to show me the ropes. How do I do this kind of thing? Like, you know, talking to, you know, Janelle, the 45-year-old mother of 3, and explaining to her that nuts aren't necessarily high in protein, and you know how to dip her fork into dressing on the side and then take a bite of her salad and have her glass of water first is not the same as a carbohydrate load for a bodybuilder. Like, they're completely different skills. Yeah. So I did not feel prepared. I mean, I knew how to talk to people, and I knew some of like human communication, and I knew how to properly perform exercises, but there's a lot that did not translate over at all.
Right. And I think there's it's different, right, when you're in person for an hour with Janelle, encouraging her, getting the best from her. I think people if y'all don't know, verbal encouragement is a huge deal. In person, verbal, performing in front of or at a gym, right? So sometimes us as coaches, we give numbers, but like, especially on accessories or RPE based stuff, it's like, if you're not pushing it, you're not going to get what you can out of it. Like you said, we're not there watching them lick the peanut butter spoon of the stuff they didn't measure or whatever it is.
It's interesting that we're having this discussion because I just got asked that very question from one of my clients. What's the difference between a personal trainer and a coach? He says, I really can't answer that, you know? And ironically, I found myself, like, as I was talking the very same things that we're talking about, really having difficulty being able to differentiate, you know, verbally. In my mind, yes, they're very different, you know, because I've been a personal trainer and I've been a coach. Same thing with Eric. But I found it really hard to verbally differentiate between the two, you know, and I mean, basically the bottom line I could go to is a personal trainer is in person and there's much more instruction involved skill-wise than my life as a coach. That was kind of what I, you know, surmised. But man, I would love to hear from you guys.
Yeah,
I'd love to hear from you guys.
I mean, it's not like it's easy if you were to use a different sport as an example. Like, what's the difference between a personal trainer and the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys? Like, that's like, I can tell you that is. It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I would definitely agree with you that the primary variables you manipulate and the fact that it's one-on-one makes a personal trainer a little more similar to a bodybuilding coach. But I think the population you work with and the goals they have changes a lot of things. Mm-hmm. You know, I would say the biggest difference between being a bodybuilding coach and a personal trainer is that your athletes as a bodybuilding coach have unsustainable goals. And that's a part of it. We're going to get you shredded. And no, of course we're not going to stay that way. We won't be able to. Like, it's going to be unhealthy. But like your personal training clients, for the most part, are someone who's looking to sustain a healthier body weight and healthier lifestyle and healthier diet. And you have to give them something that they can adopt and change their lifestyle and keep that going until they're dead, you know, and hopefully they die later than they would have normally in a better quality of life. But the bodybuilder, it's like...
Dude, I have so much to say about this, but I don't know if it's appropriate for the podcast. Is it?
I think so. Like the bodybuilder, you're like, all right, we're going to do stuff that's going to temporarily harm your mental and physical health so that you can kick ass on stage. And then we've got to transition you back to, you know, being a little more normal, but still a bodybuilder. It's just a completely different process, you know, in my mind.
Well, one's an athlete and one's an exerciser. There's this fucking great article.
One's just a person. Yeah. Well, one's a person who just wants to, like, incorporate fitness and health into their life, you know?
No, but arguably, arguably everyone should be doing some type of physical, even if their job as a construction worker counts as their exercise to stay healthy, like whatever, right? But that's the difference, right? Is, again, the Catalyst Athletics, like a 2014 article by Greg Everett, where he's, I don't know the whole title, but it's basically an athlete versus an exerciser, and he does a great job saying what you said, right? Like, one's sustainable, one's not. One's goal is about, as weird as it sounds, the exerciser, like this person wants to look better and feel more confident in life, but really, and I was trying to write an article about this, and I was trying to tell about it, like the athlete, even the physique athlete, needs to be detached from their identity relying on their physical appearance. But like, weight restricted sports a little weird, but like, if a lineman's a little fat, like whatevs, you know, like if that helps him accomplish his goal to look a certain way, then he does it. You know, Bryce is a good example too. Like, he performs better at the higher weight classes. It's just the way it is. And as a physique athlete, I've found that people get into it because, like we say, like with the goals of an exerciser to look better naked, when it's like, but if you really get into it and you're actually good at it, you got to be comfortable gaining fat, because that's part of the sport, is gaining fat. And like in my case right now,
about how you look. This is a good one for you, Steve. Listen, this is an Instagram square, all right? Caring about how you look too much as a physique athlete hurts your physique in the long run.
Yeah. But put my name on that, Steve, not Eric's, because he was terrified it. But you know what I mean? Like right now, and I was thinking about this too, because right now, my legs have grown a lot in the last couple years, and I have more stretch marks, and I'm not more upset about it. But like 4 years ago, after my last contest prep and I gained a couple stretch marks, I was like devastated. And now I'm like, fuck it, I'm getting big, dude. Let's go. But I've come a long way in the way that I see the sport. It's weird because I feel like I was an athlete as a kid, and I feel like now I am again. But there was like a half decade there when I thought I was becoming a physique athlete, when I was actually turning into mentally like a fitness model exerciser. Like I was, because I think a lot of it had to do with because it was my career and it was on camera and all that stuff.
I would even say a smart fitness model treats it the same way as an athlete.
Yeah.
So they've got to be ready for a job. They're getting paid for it. The person paying you to represent their brand doesn't care about, they might as a human, but for the business doesn't care about what you think about how you look in the clothes. They need a certain thing to be fulfilled. You do that, they pay you.
Right.
And then they need you available for the next shoot. So you have to do whatever you need to make that work for your life. And if you're doing it because, hey, I look great, I love looking great, and I'll do this on the side, those are going to conflict, Yeah. So you have to become detached. You're right.
Yeah, and another thing was like the injuries too. Is like when a exerciser, someone you're personal training, usually if they get injured, you do what the doctor says. You rest. You let it heal fully. You might even just not go to the gym for blah blah blah. But if you're an athlete, it just needs to be healed enough for you to get as much as you can done, because you compete again in 6 weeks, and like we got to cover that shit. You pop whatever you need. You ice whatever you need, and you. Because whether you can sit on the toilet when you're 70 doesn't matter as much for an athlete as it does for someone who's just exercising for health and appearance. So it's a really good article, but the whole I think Dean a lot about it.
Dean Somerset recently told me maybe I should stick to high bar and not go to low bar because I'm more likely to have hip problems. He's probably right, and if he's listening, he's probably laughing. And my first thought was, yeah, but I'm gonna do low bar because I squat more.
Yeah, and obviously at some point that can bite us in the ass, and it's being an idiot athlete. But it's still like the intent and the way that you view it is very different. And so, speaking of coaches, coaching, I found this too. Right, I'll have a client, one of my athletes. It's happened more than once. Decides they want to start coaching on the side. Maybe they're in school, maybe they already have a regular job and they want to start doing their own thing on the side. And obviously they grasp that they should probably start with Gen Pop, but unfortunately they start trying to treat their Gen Pop like the way that we work together, with them being competitors. And I'm like, well,
that's how I started.
Yeah,
I was a terrible trainer for a long time.
Yeah, because you think that they should want the things that you want. So I think about this a lot, Brad, to be honest, like the people that say they want to be athletes but behave like non-athletes, and vice versa. The average person that walks into a CrossFit gym sees the bodies of the people winning the CrossFit games and are like, I'm gonna get that. I'm like, nope, like I don't think you know what the fuck's going into that, And the common thing, which I think sucks, and I think that I tried to do it too for a certain amount of time, is a bodybuilder who's not completely there mentally as far as detaching themselves objectively. They'll be like, I know I can't look super shredded all the time, but then the next thing is, but I can look pretty good in the off season eating what I want, right? And it's like, actually, you probably can't. Not that you probably can't, but it's your idea of looking all right. Yeah, your idea of looking all right might not work out, and you still be able to put on muscle. And that's
more often than not, it won't work out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find the coaching in the off season that I do with people is getting them working on being more and more comfortable with the fact that they're uncomfortable with their level of body fat.
Yeah. And sometimes it's so bad that you have to do like a mini cut or a cleanup because you can tell this person's miserable, but the goal over time should still be to get them, like, it's hard to convince someone, like, look, I know you don't like the way you look at this body weight, but if you keep training hard and eating, in 5 years the same body weight will look better. And I know that sucks, but that is just what it is, Yeah,
it's basically get better detachment, and I'll satisfy your acute emotional needs that don't align with our goals as a bodybuilder yet, but let's work on aligning them. Get happy with 15% body fat. That's where you grow best.
Right.
I know you were just 5 3 months ago, but that doesn't matter. I know it does to you, but can we make it so it doesn't matter, or doesn't matter so much that it gets in the way? Let's work on that. Yeah.
And if it can't, then you arguably this sport won't work for you long term. Like, you won't get much better if you never eat.
And all the other problems that come with that.
Yeah. And then what sucks, right?
Socially.
And then what sucks, right, is like, so then you're this off-season bodybuilder. It's like, all right, I'm trying to teach myself that I'm okay with this. I'm trying to teach myself I'm okay with this. But then your personal training clients, that it's okay that they want to look better because they're 40 pounds overweight, and you can encourage that. So it's always like weird. There's just so many considerations with everything, but I think about it a lot.
So coaching coaches.
I know, right? But I think that's a big problem. Is not just a problem that I see with athletes not recognizing they don't really want to be athletes and vice versa, but it's that someone who is a coach decides they want to be an athlete, and they then change the way that they treat their clients, which sometimes can be good. You could learn and disseminate, but sometimes if you carry them too far with you, like you pull them in your direction when maybe they just have an opposite direction. So that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying everyone's perfect at it, but
and really kind of like we were talking about before, how each coaching, the coach relationship is unique.
Right.
It's a little bit unique because we do have coaches that, are personal trainers, and they have to look good. They have to look good, and they basically know that they have to kind of eat a little bit less, and they know they're not going to, necessarily grow as good as they could if they were at higher body fat levels, and they were, eating more food, but they have to sacrifice that. They have to sacrifice the ability to grow and maybe not even be a bodybuilder, but they got to be good. They got to look good, like a fitness model, for their personal dream. There's always that trade-off. There's always that trade-off. Like I've had people, they'll say, okay, well, what do you think? Can I sustain this look, eating this much food? And I got to be honest, I got to say, look, I don't want to burst your bubble here, but you're going to have to do one of two things. You're either going to have to live at a little higher body fat, and be able to sustain that by eating more, or B, you're going to have to be a little bit hungry, and I was at that place probably about, 6-7 years ago. Yeah. I was okay being hungry because I could compete, at a pretty high level in powerlifting, and I looked better. I'm not willing to do that now. My priorities have changed, and it's just like with other athletes, like we were just talking about. A football player knows darn good and well that they shouldn't be playing on that injured knee, but they're going to pop a couple pills. They're going to wrap it up. They're going to get on the football field so they can compete at that level, And so there's always this balancing act, and there's always this trade-off, and why in my opinion, while it's more common that we coach coaches, everyone is just a tiny bit unique. It seems like it's like there's no two that are alike.
Yeah, that was good, Brad.
Yep.
I was going to say something and I forgot because I was listening to you. I was like, oh, I'm going to say this when he's done, and then I just started listening and I forgot. Coaches coaching coaches.
That's why I take copious notes. You like that?
That is good.
Do. Got my little post-it note.
What do you want to leave them with, Eric?
Yeah, I think the big one is don't forget the value of what a coach is in the first place. It's not. I think I kind of spoiled the party a little earlier, but before I said, it's not, your value as a coach is not knowledge, right?
Right.
Like, that's part of it, but that's not even the biggest part. And so if you are more than just knowledge, then even if you have knowledge, you can benefit from a coach because of all the things you also do for clients. Help them be objective, help them make decisions with less stress, help them see outside of their blind spots. All those things are in my opinion, the primary value of having a coach, and that transcends whether or not you are a coach yourself. So I think, I don't know, it's an opportunity to grow, in my opinion. But like we've talked about, there's a ton of different ways it can look. It can look more like a consultant relationship. It can look more like a pure, like, yes sir, I'm your soldier kind of thing, depending on the personality of the athlete. So it's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do it. And like Brad said, it's unique each time. So
yeah, I just think the cost of not having a coach as a especially like figure and body, like the leaner divisions. I think that I don't think every sport needs a coach, but I do think for physique athletes, because it's so mental, and because there's a lot of biochemistry things that you can't really, you don't know you're as crazy. That's true, unless you have a ton of experience. But even then, I think everyone has a confidant or someone whose opinion matters, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
just someone to keep you. Someone that recognizes when you're going a little funny.
If Brian Whitaker can reach out to other people, then so can you. You know, like if Brian Whitaker can message someone and ask about his posing, or say, hey, Dr. Zerdos, can I get your thoughts on my training? Or hey, Lane, can I get your thoughts on my macros? Then maybe you could open yourself up to getting coaching too.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Oh, accepting applications now. No, I'm just kidding. Like,
but we are.
We actually are. But we're full all the time. So like, I know some people, they hear coaches talking about the value of coaching and they go, yeah, this is just a freaking advertisement. But 2 of the people on this podcast aren't even taking on athletes. So it's not yeah.
All right. I think we did good, guys. Thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, it's Eric Helms. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. As you know, at 3DMJ, we promote evidence-based approaches to the lifting community. If that's something you want to dive deeper into, I'd encourage you to check out my research review, Monthly Applications in Strength Sport, or for short, MASS. This is a review that myself, Dr. Mike Zerdos, and Greg Knuckles put out every month. We cover the latest research publications that are applicable to strength and physique athletes, or anyone who's looking to get stronger or improve their body comp. Our content is in both written and video format. For more information on how to subscribe, check out 3dmusclejourney.com/mass. That's 3dmusclejourney.com/MASS for further details. Thanks for tuning in.